It was meant to be the week where the Scottish Government's controversial recycling initiative, the Deposit Return Scheme, or the DRS as it's become known, got the go-ahead. But instead, it has blown up into a political row between Scotland's two governments after Westminster said it should only go ahead if glass is excluded from the scheme. Now, the Welsh First Minister, Mark Drakeford, says his government is considering the implication for its plans. It also wants to include glass in the Welsh scheme. Our political editor, Glenn Campbell, has been speaking to Mr Drakeford.
Well, we are considering the implications for our scheme, which includes glass. Always did, was part of the consultation that we held with the Northern Ireland Executive and with the UK Government. So we're reflecting on the actions of the UK Government, but at the moment, glass is in our scheme, and that's the way we expect it to stay.
But as the Scottish Government can't get an exemption from the Internal Market Act, then how are you going to manage it?
If they were to invoke it, they would be very serious questions for the UK Government. Why so late in the day? Why are they doing this now, when right up until now they have recognised the fact that we were going to include glass, because that's what the consultation that we did jointly with them said we should do. The English Government is the outlier here. The questions are for them. And of course, we will have to explore that with them, should that be their decision.
Doesn't business need a standardised system across the UK?
Well, it's a great shame that the UK Government in its English capacity doesn't recognise that, because we would have acted as Scotland did, and then they would have had the certainty and the continuity that they say business needs.
That was Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford speaking to Glenn Campbell. Well, with all this uncertainty surrounding the scheme, what's the future for the DRS? And where does it leave the producers who are just waiting to hear what they have to do? Let's speak to one, shall we? Dougal Sharp is the founder of the Innocent Gun beer brand and indeed the master brewer at its brewery. Morning.
Morning, Martin.
Thanks for being with us this morning. What do you make of where we are at the moment with all this then?
Well, it's just a bonfire of chaos. It's been chaos from the outset, and the chaos continues. Businesses are reeling with uncertainty, and no one knows where to look next for answers. It's a shambles.
Do you have sympathy with the Scottish Government at this stage? They said after, I've spoken to you in the past about the problems they've had along the way getting this scheme to where it is now, but they said they were ready to go, Wales is ready to go, and then Westminster comes in and says, hang on a minute, take a big chunk of this scheme out. That's the only way you're going to get the go-ahead.
The scheme is not ready to go in Scotland. That's utter nonsense. I've lived and breathed this and its evolution for years. And I think if you talk to any of the major businesses based in Scotland, either retailers or producers, nobody actually believes that this scheme is ready to go. It wasn't ready to go in August. It certainly won't be ready to go in March next year, because there are hundreds of unanswered questions as to how this is actually going to work in practice. And I think
Dougal, let me just stop you there. I spoke to Lorna Slater on Sunday morning in an interview. She's absolutely insistent the whole thing is ready to go. She accepts it's not been straightforward, but she's spoken to the industry, she's listened, she's made changes, and it's all systems go now, to quote her.
Well, the changes are minuscule and almost irrelevant in the overall scheme of things. And I know if you ask any of the groups which represent the producers or the retailers, the different industry bodies, there is a long list of unanswered questions about how this scheme is actually going to work. And if you take a step back from it, whether glass is included in this scheme in Scotland or not, the price that this is going to force onto consumers is going to be significant. And I'm talking about 20, 30, 40 pounds extra on your shopping bill every week. And you're not going to get all of that back. So I think, whether or not Westminster's intervention is helpful or unhelpful, as it stands or as it was drafted, the scheme is absolute insanity. For consumers, and actually will lead to potentially less recycling than more in Scotland, which I find absurd.
How can you come up with a figure like 20, 30, 40 pounds a week on your shopping bill? Where'd you get that number from?
Well, if you look at every business has additional costs, because the ideology of the scheme is force the costs as far back in the system as you can get them, right? So producers have additional costs, and they're significant. Then you've got retailers that are going to have significant additional costs. All of those costs are going to be passed on to the consumer, plus VAT. Then you're going to add a deposit, right? So there's loads of cost plus a deposit, plus VAT, right? So if you add, and this is on every scheme item, from kids' fruit shoots, bottles of water, cans of juice, cans of beer, whatever. It's everything. And it is going to, if you add it all up on a weekly basis, it's going to be significant.
Countries everywhere around the world operate schemes like this to go without any drama or crisis. Why
Not
can't
like
we
this.
But why can't?
No.
What's the difference?
The schemes, well, a lot of schemes around the world, most schemes around the world have smaller deposit amounts. Certain things are included, certain things are excluded, and most of the time the money is levied at the till. So it isn't forcing cost back into the supply chain. So the minute you start forcing costs back up the supply chain, i.e. onto the producers, we have to then, that's additional cost for us. We have to pass that on. The retailers pass the costs that they incur on. And a lot of the times in these places where DRS has been implemented, they already had, or they never had curbside recycling or any of the advanced recycling that we've currently got. And, we've been very clear that the DRS system that has been Scotland is going to almost wipe out a lot of the existing infrastructure which has been put in place to deal with recycling.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly wasteful.
If Lawrence Lake was here, I'm sure she'd say we get about 60% on glass recycling at the moment. She wants to put that up to 90 to 100%. Let me just ask you about
We're
glass.
actually over that. Well, that's a key point, Martin. We're over that. We're close to 70% on glass. And
Okay.
Here's the rub. Here's the rub about our scheme. 25% of potential glass is out. Things like sauce bottles and jars of passata and, things like that, right? That's out. It's not included in the system. That's 25% of recycling. So if your maximum is 75% and the scheme collects 90%, the maximum you can collect is 67.5%. We're already above that.
All right.
So there's the reality of what we're proposing here.
Okay.
Less recycling than we're currently doing.
Dougal Sharp from Innis and Gunn, we are out of time. I'm sure one thing is for certain, we'll be speaking to you and many others about this over the next few weeks. And